Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Innovation First online salon, second of the three-part monthly series where communication leaders discuss all things innovation. This series is brought to you by First Partners in partnership with Reputation Today and supported by PRovoke Media. A warm welcome to our 120 plus registered participants who have logged in using Zoom. This session is also streaming live on the Reputation Today YouTube channel at bit.ly Reputation Today on YT. So if your Zoom connection has an issue, you can switch to YouTube and watch it being live streamed there, but with no option to ask questions. The hashtag for the session is IFOS. Please tweet using the hashtag IFOS and don't forget to tag our partner at firstpartners_, and of course, Rep Today Mag and PRovoke Media. For those who are attending using Zoom, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A box, and the moderator will try to pick as many as he can in the last 15 minutes. Kindly avoid using the chat box for this. I request Dilip Yadav, founding partner of First Partners, to make the opening remarks and then hand it over to Arun Sudhaman of PRovoke Media to steer this panel discussion ahead. Over to you, Dilip.
Thanks, Anubhuti. So I would like to begin by first thanking Arun Sudhaman, CEO and Editor-in-Chief PRovoke Media, for making the effort to moderate this second edition of Innovation First online salon. I would also like to welcome a panelist today, Ms. Roma Balwani, who's a communications veteran and who has worked across both B2C and B2B environments and is currently the Director of Communications and Brands at Vedanta Resources. Rachana, Panda, former Chief Communications Officer of GE South Asia, who's been widely known for many innovations in communication. Arpana Kumar Ahuja, the India lead for communications and programs at Shell. Deebba Ali, Director in India, PR lead for SAS at Oracle. Gayathri Sharma, Head of Communications for India and South Asia at Rolls-Royce. Someone who has straddled both B2C and B2B roles. Abhinav Kumar, who's the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at TCS Global. And finally, Suniet, Bezbaroowa, Director for Marketing, Brand and Communications for India and South Asia at Deloitte. To my mind, this session is important because when we think of innovation in communication, we always find that it is traditionally the B2C companies which have been hogging the limelight. However, during the present COVID crisis, we were reminded of the importance of B2B companies who kept the wheels of the economy running. So while consumption-led activities would have stopped, but we needed the power plants to keep working, we needed telecom networks to keep the connections going, aircrafts to deliver critical supplies, and data centers to maintain higher than normal redundancy. We also saw many industrial giants coming forward and making a generous commitment of big resources to help the needy. So let us hear from the experts here of how innovation really panned out during this phase, whether it was a trigger or whether it kind of triggered innovation or whether that kind of will be seen as an opportunity. Let's hear from the expert. Over to you, Arun.
Thank you very much, Dilip. A big thank you to Reputation Today. A big thank you and a welcome to all of our panelists, and a thank you, of course, to First Partners. It's a pleasure to partner with all of you again. We're going to talk about innovation, which certainly from my perspective and our perspective at PRovoke has really been one of the few positives, perhaps, that we can take from this situation that we are living through. And of course, as we all know, this is a global situation. We have, I'm joining this call from Hong Kong. Abhinav is in Brussels. Roma is in Bangalore. And then the rest of our panelists are in the Delhi NCR region. What we are seeing is innovation on a global scale. We're seeing it across different sectors, across different industries. We are seeing new ways of working. Digital transformation has been accelerated in a manner that we would not have expected before this pandemic. And frankly, we're seeing solutions for problems that perhaps we didn't even realize existed. Business will probably never be the same again. And maybe business to business will never be the same again. We know that B2C often gets all the headlines, but we also know, as Dilip said, that B2B has been far more resilient during this crisis. And from everything we see at PRovoke, we know how innovative the B2B industries are. So I'm very keen to hear the thoughts of our panelists in terms of how they have been using this situation to disrupt their existing modes of operation. There are really 2 or 3 questions I want to pose to each of you. And I think the easiest way of doing this is to come around you to ask for your thoughts on these questions all in one go, rather than doing too many rounds. So let me begin with these questions. First of all, how has your company deployed innovative communication solutions during the lockdown? How have these fed into and perhaps even led overall brand, corporate, and business innovation? And what are the challenges you faced and the lessons you will take away from this? Now, obviously, that's quite a lot, but I really want to remind you all to try and be concise in your remarks. I'd like you to stick to a 3-minute limit for your answers, which I will aim to enforce. And I'd also like to encourage all of our attendees to please ask questions. Please don't wait until the end of the session, because often there's a rush of questions and we can't get to all of them. Please start sending them in now. So thank you all very much. Roma, I think you got the questions. I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind.
So thank you, Arun, and thank you, Reputation today. And I'm very glad to be here to be having this discussion, because this is also a time for us to learn from each other. I think this is where we really get the opportunity to share our best practices. And I'll just go straight into what Vedanta did, because at that point in time, the sector that we represent, which is an essential sector, and it required a different agility in communication. So it's not only innovation in communication, it's the agility in communication that we adapted or adopted. I think that's one thing which really led us to be one of the first movers who put in a special fund. And we got our top management. I remember it was almost midnight when we had this conversation with our chairman and our senior management. This was, I think, on 20th of March. And we said that we need to put a special fund because this is going to escalate. And that's what we did. So we had a very quick decision-making body. It was called the Business Continuity Management Team, which came into force. We also had a separate task force, which was what we call as compassionate communication. Now, when you say compassionate communication, what do we mean by it? Because this is going to impact society. This is going to impact business. This is going to impact our employees. So the entire way, we didn't look at it as crisis communication. We looked at it as compassionate communication. For that, you have to have a proper strategy. And that's what we adopted very quickly. And which is why I said agility in communication was the need of the hour. And that's when we said that what are we wanting to focus on? We are a purpose-driven organization. We do talk about giving back, but this is the time that the brand has to walk the talk. And that's what we did. We very clearly articulated where all are we going to really deploy those funds, because migrant workers are some people that our chairman just felt that, my God, my cook cannot come and give me my lunch or my dinner. So he's a migrant worker. So starting from there, from a small incident, we said that there are 3 areas that we need to focus on. One, of course, is your own employee. How do you look after them? The communities that where you operate from. So health and hygiene becomes a very important factor. And then the migrant workers who are going to be all over the place, and how do we look at them? At the same time, compassion goes beyond human beings. So we said there are stray animals. Who's going to look after them? So we even looked at meals for all for even the stray animals across many states. And we didn't just stop there. There were other states which were in dire straits. So we said, let's just not go to the communities around where we work. Let's also step out and do it in other places. So we went into places like Bihar, like Uttar Pradesh, where we don't have any footprint, but the compassion communication really led us there. And that's how we started. And what really helped me in this communication, while all the communication levers were working overtime because we were all in the virtual situation, we said we need to have very quick technology to help us. So our IT teams came forward. They created a volunteering app for us. They created an app which we could get real-time information. So it's not just the communication team that really worked. It was an entire band of workers, as I would call ourselves. We were all foot soldiers at that point in time, and we all came together to converge. And possibly that helped create that brand connect and resonate with all our stakeholders. I think I'll stop at that, and we can have some more conversations on it.
Thank you so much, Roma. Very interesting to hear about this shift from crisis communication to compassionate communication. I think words do matter. And I think that by framing it as compassion, it does actually play quite a big role in the kind of behavior from the company. Abhinav, over to you. Very keen to hear the view from your perspective. Obviously, you're in a global role. You're based in Europe. So perhaps you have had a different take on things.
Yeah, Arun, firstly, thanks for having me here. Thanks to you and PRovoke Media, Reputation Today, and First Partners as well. It's a pleasure to be here to share our perspectives and also exchange perspectives with this very distinguished panel. I'm also particularly pleased to be here because, as you mentioned, I'm based in Brussels. Something about Brussels that some of you visited may know and others may not know is that statistically, Brussels gets 200 days of rain in a year. And right on cue, it's cloudy and raining outside. So it's a good day to be sitting here and talking with you. I think, reflecting on this whole exercise, and it is only now that we're catching our breath to reflect on it because it's been a very intense period. I think, I'm sure all the panelists here would agree that the first half of this year has been very, very intensive for all the businesses and particularly for communications teams. We are a very global company. We operate in 46 countries across the world, supporting 1,000 clients in different industries. We have 450,000 employees, including 140 nationalities across all these places. So we've been dealing with this crisis pretty much since the start of the year, starting with China and East Asia, which first experienced it, to the March period when it's really started to grow into Europe and the United States. And currently where it seems to be, the epicenter seems to be Latin America. I don't need to tell any of you the statistics in India, which have been growing and so forth. So I think it's been a very intensive time dealing with it. If we reflect back on it, there are probably, I think, 4 stages we've been through in our response to the disruption. The first priority for us, number one, by far, was the safety of our employees, right? So we had to quickly make sure all our employees could productively work from home. We also have a very mobile workforce. People always traveling and working on client facilities all over the world, etc. So we had people who were stranded during lockdowns. We had to take care of their welfare, eventually get them back to their hometowns and other things. So that was paramount, just ensuring their safety of their families, and then getting them to productively work from home. In parallel with that, and Roma made a mention of the excellent work their own IT teams did for them. We had a concurrent mission that the IT industry, as in India and many other regions in Europe here as well, is declared a mission critical industry. And rightfully so, because we support the backbone and the core infrastructure for some of the other critical industries, which was important to stay up during this lockdown, whether it's banking, it's hospitals, it's the public sector, it's online retail, telecom, everything had to work for work to go on. So a lot of our teams first manage the disruption in-house, but at the same time, we're making sure that the clients were not disruptive. So working very closely with our clients to make sure that they can keep on at this time, or they can make the changes they need to their supply chain, to dealing with their own customers, to bringing collaborative tools inside their own workplaces, etc. So that's important. Once we stabilize this, and you spoke about compassion, that's really, really important. It's been a part of the DNA of the Tata Group. We started thinking about how we can be part of this solution and what can we bring to the table. So we've been a strategic partner to the World Economic Forum. We joined their COVID action platform, which has brought together about 1,000 companies, aggregating efforts to provide relief and to see what we can do towards the vaccine and cure research and other things. In terms of the larger Tata Group, the foundation made a big pledge of $200 million towards relief efforts, towards production of protective equipment, etc. And as a technology company, with TCS, we were always looking to, and still are looking at, how can we bring technology to be a part of the solution, right? So anything from help scientists helping with vaccine research, to many of the new applications which are needed in healthcare, to even education. There were 1 billion students who were disrupted during this period. The education was disrupted. So we made our online education platform available free for a year, anywhere in the world with any school or college which wanted to use it. So many other things like that. I think now we are at a stage where, a lot of these things are ongoing but stabilized. Probably the last 4 or 6 weeks, we've been in what we would call an innovation phase, where with things being stable, now we're looking at what next, right? The situation on COVID and the pandemic tends to be uncertain, but we need to continue operating. Our clients need to keep operating. So we're working with them in a lot of innovation exercises through digital events, a lot of engagement in seeing how can we get some of the most affected industries back to work again, whether it's the airline sector, hospitals, hotels, tourism, etc., has been very, very, very affected. How do you get them safely back to work again? We're also introspecting internally inside the marketing communications team because if you look at what we do, a lot of what we do in the B2B space is very physical. Our teams run 400 events in a year, anything from large trade shows to our own events to a big sponsorship portfolio with marathon properties, which we take part in. So we engage our customers, and that's a key part of our relationship building and trust building efforts to engage our customers in a very physical manner, which is not possible today. So we are pivoting towards a lot more communications, a lot more social media, and a lot more digital events to keep our communities, our customers, our partners, our employees engaged in this period, which puts the communications team front and center of this exercise, right at the heart of the business.
Yeah, very strong flavor of digital transformation in your answer, and I suspect we will come back to that. So thank you. Rachana, I wanted to come to you next. So you have actually left your most recent post at GE. So curious to hear your observations as a free agent, I suppose, in terms of the innovation you've seen perhaps from the B2B sector in general.
Thank you, Arun, and thanks to Reputation Today, PRovoke, and First Partners to get this going. I've been attending this forum in different years, and it's been fantastic. It's been growing. It's been really amazing to see the type of work communications does, and in terms of innovation. So yeah, Arun, it's exciting. It's really, really exciting to see things from the outside and observe how different companies are moving and how communicators are really, really becoming stronger in terms of the function, in terms of deliveries. So a couple of observations that I have, particularly in the B2B world, it's been very interesting. And I was reading a McKinsey article where it says the India B2B decision maker optimism has really, really gone up. And B2B businesses means it's not one-time purchase, like, it is a longer decision making. The cycles are very long, which means that the trust with the stakeholders have to be, a longer cycle, which means if you have to sell a power, a turbine or an aviation engine or anything for that matter, you have to engage with the customers or stakeholders like the government, regulators, policymakers for years altogether. So now, and that's mainly physical contact. The lead generation part of it could be digital, but the rest of it, naturally comes from physical contact or in-person contact. It's been a disruptive change for B2B companies to see it upside down. And now they're saying, okay, great, let's go digital. So the connections, the engagement virtually with your suppliers, with your customers, with your employees, and the government has really disrupted the entire system. And I've seen communicators really building up the entire story. So a couple of observations here. Retail selling or digital selling is now going to be a part of the B2B doing business. The go-to-market strategy has changed completely. And with that, communicators have a lot to do now, apart from employee piece, the internal piece, which I know we've covered very well. I think apart from that, engagement with the customers or the suppliers or partners have significantly have increased, which means co-creating content, co-creating stories, and being able to engage with them digitally. I think that has been a great innovation from the IT teams, from the functional teams and the business teams. The ability to work together with the businesses has grown substantially. The second point that I would say in terms of using the operations, a lot of B2B companies have used the operations. People who were making cars are talking about, they've disrupted the whole thing and pivoted to make, healthcare products. I mean, amazing innovation, business innovation. And the storytelling that the communicators have done to be able to use that for engagement with different stakeholders, I think has been fantastic. These two observations in terms of operations and in terms of go-to-market strategy change and the communications messaging has really amazed me.
Thanks, Rachana. So interesting, you mentioned digital selling, which of course has huge implications for storytelling and the external relations strategy, but also product innovation. And I think that's something really important that we have to bear in mind. We are seeing companies change what they sell, quite frankly, in response to different demands. And that is the kind of change I suspect that wouldn't have happened had it not been for this kind of situation. Suniet, over to you. What are your observations from Deloitte?
Well, thanks, Arun. It's good to be part of yet another panel with you. And thanks, First Partners, and thanks, Reputation Today, for this opportunity. It's great to hear Abhinav and Roma talk about what's going on in their organization, because that's what I think resonates with most of us in our global organizations. So one of the things that is critical to us at Team Deloitte is a philosophy that we follow, which is care, connect, commit, and the concept of people first. People first is at the core of everything that we do. So be it our people, our employees, or our clients, we believe in completely, first of all, taking care of that segment. So what had happened was, as soon as the pandemic struck, we put a lot of emphasis on how we were dealing with our employees, because a lot of our employees were, apart from being here in India, they're also kind of in overseas locations. So there were efforts made to take them out from those countries before the countries went into lockdown. In fact, there were situations where actually we were able to get medicines for people who are affected with COVID, our employees who are affected with COVID here in India from other countries. And those were done within a matter of, say, 24 hours. And that included a lot of seamless collaboration with our other network member firms. So there was a lot of focus that we wanted to put on our employees, including the fact about, concerning from the wellness point of view. Mental health was, again, one of the key factors that kind of is an issue. So dealing with 31,000 plus people here in India is kind of, it'll give us a lot of things to talk about. So we also noticed that we have a emotional counseling helpline. In fact, the counseling, the queries increased by 3 times from what it used to be before March. And we were successfully being able to deal with a lot of such queries. A lot of communication actually happened from the leadership, and I think this was a good opportunity to actually lessen the gap that is between the leadership and the people. So I think it gave a good opportunity for our CEO, for top leadership to come and have that connect with people. And I think we chose the most organic way of doing it, which is plain conversations, be it with our clients, be it with our people. We really adopted that whole idea about active listening, even if it be with our clients, and we made sure that that's how we kind of go out and reach out to the market. The other point that we really put an emphasis on is about doing a lot of these virtual sessions. In fact, I was part of one today, this morning also, and this is about fitness, wellness that we do every morning. And it's not only open to Deloitte employees, it's again open to our families also, who can be a part of these wellness programs. We have also mandatorily blocked 15 minutes every Friday for employees to be in this program called Each One Reach One, where you essentially just encourage people to go and talk to them, understand if there's anything they can help out with. So a lot of initiatives, focusing on our people, and our clients.
Thanks, Suniet. So innovation in client servicing, quite a big change, I think, in terms of leadership communication, and of course the importance of wellness, which I guess plays into the whole internal narrative as well. So some very interesting lessons there. Arpana, you are up next. Very curious to hear how communications has changed at Shell.
Thanks, Arun. Happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to be in the same panel as so many people that I know as friends. I don't know about, I won't use the word change in communication. I think for us, the focus shifted, of course, to the 3 C's, as we like to call it, our colleagues, our customers, and the community. For Shell, health and safety has always been prime focus. So there's nothing new about it. So keeping that center and focused on these 3 C's, I think we realized right from the beginning that we were in uncharted waters, right? So times like that, I think the best way is to stay focused on your purpose and your people. And I think that's what kind of led us to develop our strategy going forward. And keeping our people in mind, we knew with the disruptions, no more normal routines, with so many different information changing, not necessarily authentic information coming our way, we soon realized, I think, that to be able to help our people was to be able to connect, what we call the single source of truth. So the daily communication that we were sending out from our country chair really became the go-to source for all our people to have that one-stop shop where they knew they would find information, everything related to COVID, whether it was internal or external, whether the kind of policies that we were coming up to support them, it all found its way in the single source of truth. So I think that for us until date has just been the most comforting place. Everybody looks out for the, initially they were daily, now we've obviously kind of made it weekly, but that becomes like something that everybody looks forward to say, okay, fine, now what's coming away, what's the latest situation, because they know that they can trust it and it's the most credible source that they can go to. So beyond that, I think, with the whole work from home situation, everybody kind of, missing the human connect, we did small, simple things like missing your, coffee conversations by the cooler. So we have something called coffee chats, which has been from day one, we've kind of established it in something, there are these 2 fixed times through the day. You can just log in and it's called coffee chats. Who will you meet today? So it could be anybody. And I think tapping into our vast network of, our global colleagues, you can log in, you can meet anybody, chat. It's all non-work related. So it kind of gives you a nice support system. But from a work point of view, also, we did a series consistent, what we call virtual chai with our, our line managers to discuss some focused discussions on the, problems and issues that we are facing. Times like this, I think positivity is something very, much required, and positivity is also very infectious. So we had our own, very own Shell frontline heroes, right? Being part of the essential services and, being, looking at providing energy for the nation to move ahead. There were enough and more of our colleagues who were keeping the lights on. We had lots of stories to share and motivate people across our entire universe, stories of, our colleagues, some of our colleagues who volunteered to stay for 50 days in isolation at our, our R&D lab in Bangalore, just so that, the lab could restart once the lockdown ended. So there were enough and more stories for us to share internally and equally externally as well, deploying a lot of our own channels. Yes, digital and social was what led the way. And I think the approach, even for across, colleagues and customers, was more about assurance, informing them on the protocols, extending care, even appreciation. I think at Shell, we were amongst the first few to really kind of go out and do the Thank You Frontline Heroes campaign, which was very, very well received. enabling, how do we go out there and enable, whether it's our people, our customers, the communities, how do you kind of, show up as a brand? I think the authenticity of every action of ours, I think that is what guided us to continue to, stay true to who we've always been. When it comes to, I think, innovation, from a brand perspective, I think, again, constant listening, dialogue, being in touch with our partners. What came out very quickly was that our customers really needed convenience, right? So whether it was, say, our Shell fuel stations, we quickly ramped up the product offering that we had so that the Shell fuel station became the one-stop shop, not only to fuel your vehicles, but also to fuel your house. So, something as simple as ready to cook, eggs, milk, bread. So at the time when the neighborhood grocer also couldn't offer that to you, you could be assured of the fact that you would find that at a Shell Select store. So essentially, I think the way we've kind of shown up as a brand, even in the community, to help express empathy, to kind of stitch up support, I think that's been very important to us. So yes, there's been a lot, but I think if I was to sum up from, the key takeaways really have been to lead with purpose, how you have to put your employees first, how you have to put your leadership in the spotlight, because this is a time when you do need consistent, aligned messaging. You have to increase and expand your communication. The cadence of your communication does go up. You deploy all your available platforms and channels so that you have a wider reach, and for not just communicating one way, as I said, maintaining a steady dialogue. And today's day and age, technology offers that to us. I think very important that communication must be hypersensitive to the context. We know that our audiences, our colleagues, our customers, everybody's living in very fragile and disruptive times. So how do you kind of express empathy there? And that's the focus that needs to be, not on opportunities. And I think the last question was on challenges. For me, I think I just feel that, yes, I think we're already seeing that, yes, work from home is going to be a very long situation that we are going to be in. And we're seeing fatigue with the virtual webinar, video conferences. So how do you make up for that, with the whole human context? I think that's really where the challenge is.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting, some of the points you raised, actually. I mean, the importance of over-communication, which I think is something we hear of and see time and time again. Staying positive, the importance of tone, single source of truth, which I think is easier said than done in big organizations. I'm sure you're all aware of that. And of course, the challenges of misinformation, which I think many of you would have had to deal with. Gayathri, let me come to you next. Keen to hear of how you have innovated in terms of communication, if at all, at Rolls-Royce.
Thank you. Thanks, Arun, and thank you all. And I think it's been really interesting listening to all the panelists on this session. It's a great knowledge sharing platform. I think I would probably resonate with a lot of what some of our other panelists have already said. We also at Rolls-Royce did some similar things. So I guess great minds think alike. We set up an incident management team as well. Our focus initially, of course, right from the beginning had to be on people, being empathetic to people and mental well-being, and ensuring safety of people, getting some of the people who were at other locations back to the country. So a lot of that work, of course, took up a lot of time and effort, especially I think in the beginning of the lockdown and this whole phase of dealing with this crisis. But I think one thing in terms of internal communication that I felt was very, very important was the role of the CEO or the organization's leader in leading that communication by example. So, whether it is some informal pictures or videos of the CEO on our social media internal platforms like Yammer, etc., which really make it more relatable for people to realize that the new normal is really, it's the same for leaders as it is for them, and everybody is dealing with the same challenges. And also ensuring that there is a lot of empathy across every single conversation that we were having with employees. Mental well-being was definitely a challenge that was brought up by a lot of our leaders, a lot of functional leads, etc. So we did also roll out a lot of interesting ways to kind of keep people motivated, keep people positive. We rolled out a quirky tasks series where everybody, you know, every day would have a different quirky task, whether it was doodling or just sharing pictures of birds they spotted, or doing quirky video conference calls, you know, where they could set their own dress code. So everybody had to wear a hat for a video conference call, for example. So it just made things livelier, interesting. It was challenging. It continues to be, I think. And as Arpana said, I think the human connect is something that now, I think after, you know, 3 months, definitely people are feeling it a lot more, that it's so challenging. But in terms of external communication, I would say that essentially what we do as communicators really hasn't changed. Whether it is assessing what our businesses need, or crafting those key messages, assessing whether the needs of the business have changed, what is the current, what are the current gaps that we need to fill, and more importantly, or rather most importantly to me, is contextualizing those messages. Definitely the kind of intel that we could provide to leaders in terms of what's happening in terms of government developments, geopolitical developments. I think as B2B businesses, I mean, especially for us in the aerospace and defense sector, knowing what's happening in the geopolitical space, being able to join some of those dots and contextualizing our messages and our stories within that has been really, really critical. And I mean, I would probably give the example of whether it's skilling, so, you know, or talent development. So we also launched we opened up our digital academy to the public, just as TCS did. We've also, you know, created a platform for data analytics and insights in terms of how businesses can speed up recovery in a post-COVID era. So communicating a lot of that and the positive messaging that we could pull out and drive in that space. Self-reliance or technology, which has come to the fore. How is my business really relevant in the context of all of this? Is what I think we as communicators have had to go out and, you know, tell our stories better. And I think now more than ever, that contextualization has played a very important role. We are also facing definitely challenges like we've got global announcements of job cuts. Now, in the face of that coming in and that news pouring in from global, how do you keep the India story, you know, going strong? Because you do need your government and other stakeholders to understand that, you know, the India story remains strong and there is a very positive story here. And we continue to be a very, very strong business, able to offer the best of, you know, offerings, whether it be in defense or aerospace or power systems, which is our third business. So, I mean, these have been challenging, which means I think the second thing that I would say has been really important is the story mining that we do as communicators, and being, you know, going out there and trying to find every positive story that you can possibly find and being able to tell that in the most relevant manner. I think that has been the second most important thing from a external storytelling point of view. So I think I'd leave you with that for now.
Thanks, Gayathri. I think we're all keenly aware of the impact on mental well-being, and I'm just hopeful that these lessons will remain in place, you know, in the years to come. And then the second point you made, I thought was very interesting as well, that the challenge around contextualizing stories, you know, we're not just going through a pandemic, there's also some very interesting geopolitical challenges. But I guess it can also raise a related challenge, which is trying to find angles where, when the media is really focused on quite specific areas right now, maybe that's something we can discuss later. Okay, last but by no means least at all, Deebba from Oracle. Very keen to hear your perspective in terms of innovation in communication.
Thank you, Arun, and thank you everyone for giving me this opportunity. Since I'm the last one in that order, there are a lot of things that resonated with me, a lot of things that I heard here. I think one line that really sums it up for Oracle is less is more, you know, at this point in time when it comes to communication. we've always been at the helm of all of this activity, right? And this was a time when we really decided to stop everything, pause, take a step back, and really take a relook at what we wanted to say, where we wanted to say, and how we wanted to say. So in that sense, we took a conscious decision to make a shift. And if I really break, innovation at two levels, one, of course, is business. So clearly at a business level, people continued work because really technology, we are in that sector, and technology is really the glue today that is, that has kept the world together in these difficult times. So it was really, really important for Oracle to keep functioning, keep giving that support to its customers, which at a business level they did. And of course, there were simultaneous innovations at a product level that were happening, things like, coming out with, interesting products and solutions and software that can, help a CHRO tomorrow, help track COVID amongst their employees and their families. So innovation at a product level to that extent was happening at one level. If I come back to communications and focus on that, I think we very quickly decided that we are not going to broad base our communication. We are going to narrow it down, and we're going to clearly look at two areas that are most important to us. So one, of course, is customers. The second was employees. And we made sure that, one of the key things that we realized over a period of time, and in fact, if you go back and refer to the recent Edelman barometer, that very clearly talks about trust, right? And trust is in these difficult times is a rare commodity. It's difficult to maintain. It's difficult to, take it up, whether it's any of your stakeholders. So that was one of the key priorities for us, to ensure that we maintain that level of trust, transparency, and seamless communication, whether it's our customers or it's our employees. So, on a customer front, I would say that one of the key things we did as a strategy was to not speak what we want to speak, but really speak about what the customers want to hear at this point in time. Because clearly they don't want to hear what they've been hearing all through. These times are different. These times demand very different measures, very different level of communication. So, what we clearly did was we segmented and bucketed our customers. And the way we did it was we looked at industries, we looked at their stages of evolution, and we said, okay, so there are customers who are in a survival mode. They've been massively disrupted. So the communication is going to be very different to those customers, right? And then we had customers who, were in the adaptive mode, they had been disrupted, but then they were, looking at sustaining themselves. And then there were customers, on the other hand, which are clearly in the growth mode. I mean, they've had it going really well for them. There are companies which have actually got into doubling their business in the new normal. So, it is basically segmenting your communication objective, segmenting, how you communicate with different buckets of customers, what their needs are, what they want to hear from you, and what you want to talk to them. So I think that was the strategy, communication strategy, clearly, we worked with on the customer side. On the employee side, we put in place a lot of, things like employee assistance programs, for customers and their families, for employees and their families, employees can call in, talk to mental health experts, talk to counselors, chit chat with fellow, employees, colleagues, and talk their heart out. So there was a complete program in place for that. We put in place a dedicated Slack channel, Rise Above COVID, which speaks about how you can utilize your time well, how you can upskill yourself during these times. So I think there were a lot of these, programs that were put in place at an employee level. And I think if I come back to the customer, external communication, we use some very, interesting ways to reach out to customers. We did a very balanced mix of earned and paid media, because there are restrictions that we saw even within the media fraternity. That's so every message cannot be taken out, through media at this point in time. So we decided, one, on a digital first strategy. And, we did a lot of things with our marketing and some standalone as earned, where we, took forward a lot of peer insights. We invited a lot of our customers to share what they were going through, what their learnings were. And, we also spoke about, how we are helping our customers to in turn help their customers, being in the B2B space. So I think those stories really did well externally. And we also had a ready regular stream of internal success stories, where we, we appreciated the work that our teams were doing in spite of all the restrictions, how they were going out of their way to really support customers on customer sites, and with any kind of difficulty they were facing at this point in time. So I think it was a balanced mix of external communication and internal communication that we had at this time, and we continue to take this position of a trusted advisor forward, whether it's with our customers or it is our employees, forward, even post-COVID.
Yeah, and I think maybe that advisory role has been elevated by this situation, perhaps, which is a silver lining for the communications function, because certainly from what I've seen, I've never seen a time when communication has been more important than it is now. And also very interesting, I think, that you started, if I'm not mistaken, by saying less is more.
Yes.
And that might be the first time I've heard that during the many webinars I've done on this subject. So that is also a nice message too. Okay, so please keep your questions coming in. We have a few already from the floor. I'm going to start with one from Raj Sahu. So this one I want to direct specifically to those of you that only talked about internal communication. And I think that's mostly the people at the beginning of the kind of round robin. And the question is, what was the external communication strategy? How did it change specifically when it comes to media? Is there anyone in particular who has a burning desire to answer that question? Okay, Abhinav?
I'll go with it. I think it's an interesting observation by Raj there. I think, a lot of what people have said in this panel resonates. There's a lot of common approach. I think one point which comes across is clearly, at least at the start of the pandemic, there was this overwhelming focus on internal communications, right? We needed to do it not just with our employees, but actually with our ecosystem, whether it's partners, clients, suppliers, etc. Right? So that's certainly true in our case as well. There was a push towards it. In terms of the external strategy, we'll come to it, but I think there's one thing which has changed is also the nature of the stories. Deebba was just talking about it, Gayathri spoke about it, as did some of the others. Is if you look at what people want to consume right now, people right now want to be reassured and they want to be inspired, right? So they're looking for human stories, they're looking for stories of resilience. If you look at our own content, which we've been pushing out both internally and externally, just as examples, I think 2 pieces of content which did really well for us. One was when we asked our employees to send in pictures of themselves working from home with their pets. So people sent pictures with their cats and dogs. Some had horses, some had chickens. Our CEO contributed with a picture with his Labrador working there, and that was turned into a video. That really engaged people. I think it also reassured people that while they're working from home, they could be more relaxed, and it is a different way of working. The other piece of content which did well were inspiring stories. We have a colleague in New Jersey who, in his outside of work, has sort of got a license as an ambulance driver, and he volunteered his time to drive ambulances for a local hospital, fetching people to and fro from the hospitals who were battling COVID. So things like that, I think, have inspired and worked. On the external front, a lot of it is business as usual, which we need to project and do, right? They are the usual financial and investor things. We've had our financial earnings this quarter. We had our first virtual AGM ever. All of that is going on. But I also think there's a tremendous opportunity which is available for the communications team. There was this very interesting study which was done by Nielsen. Nielsen is a client of ours. They'd done this study during the last recession in the year 2008, 2009, in which what they found was they talk about this concept of excessive share of voice, which means if you look at your share of voice, which is your presence in media and other channels, and you look at your share of market, which is your actual market share. During downturns, mostly your competitors and others in the market tend to reduce their share of voice, particularly the paid part. We see in the advertising space, a lot of spends and other things have gone down. So what they discovered looking at the large data set was that companies who actually stepped in to fill that void and therefore gained a larger share of voice versus share of market started to gain a lot of market share once recovery started to set in. I think the number was, if you had a 10% excess share of voice over your market share, it translated into 0.5% gain in market share whenever the recovery started setting in, right? So I think that is actually a financial opportunity where the communications function can play a large role in the months to come as well.
Arun, I'd like to add to what Abhinav said. That,
please go ahead.
It's all about how you position your intangible assets and how do you communicate your intangible assets. You know, you always see in your balance sheet, there's some number which is, like he said, in the financial balance sheet, that you see what is known as an intangible asset. And it's all about building your brand and your reputation and what is the value of it, the brand value of it. And actually, we really took this opportunity because we had just started a campaign in September, October, where we talked about minerals and metals really contributing. Everything that you get from below the earth is what you use above the earth, right? So all the metals, oil, gas, whatever is used to produce every product that is used in your everyday life. So we started that campaign at that point in time, which was called Desh Ki Zaruraton Ke Liye. Everything that the nation needs comes from below the ground. So when we saw the traction to that brand and we had to actually walk that talk, that's when we realized that the entire, when I said compassionate communication, really resonated. Because what did we do? The first time when we had the town hall, the chairman actually told the entire team, we were about 600 people on this town hall. He said, can you come with ideas? What do we do next? I'm at a loss. Now, for a chairman to say that and ask for ideas, you know, the whole gratitude which came out in this space was just amazing. Everybody connected. So the innovation and communication that really came out of this whole experience has been something that I don't think I would have witnessed, or in my career of 4 decades have I ever witnessed. So I think that is very important. In terms of internal communication, what we did, really we rallied and put innovation communication as an internal sport. If you put it as a sport, you then get the positivity. So all what my colleagues said, that all the kind of things that they did, it all really generated from this whole feeling of creating it as a sport. So that's what we did. And for the external communication, we aligned with the government. We said, what is the government talking about? What is the government talking about self-reliant India? What are they talking about self-sufficient India? That is when our communication to the external world actually showed what all are we doing to create the nation building, what are the building blocks that we need to reset. So we had to reset that. And that's what we communicated very effectively. And our brand really resonated. We didn't stop at that. After we finished the COVID-19 kind of CSR activities, we went out to the 9 states. We actually did an internal survey. We said, have our stakeholders really understood what we have provided, what the essential services that we are providing to them, not only in their state, but at the federal level to the country. It was so heartening to see that whether it was we did one of those very quick things that the government asked us, that we want PPEs. The Ministry of Textiles reached out to us. We were the first ones to agree to get that. So we had to import it. You won't believe the kind of coordination that went through. It was not only the communication team, it was everybody who came together. I think that kind of gratitude that we expressed, that we shared, that really helped in the external communication.
Okay, thank you.
Arun,
So
can I just
turn it into a sport. Just very quick, Suni, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Just from an external point of view, I think one of the things we tried doing, and it's slightly different, is from the point of view that, see, 87% of actually Deloitte in India are millennials. Okay, so we thought that a millennials survey could really do well in terms of providing a perspective of what millennials in India think about this certain situation. So we went out and put up a perspective there, and there are some very interesting findings around what millennials think about cooperating with the government, or what do they feel about what are the pertinent issues in society at this point of time. Similarly, in terms of an external perspective, we also did this consumer sentiment survey, which actually kind of talks about the consumer analysis in terms of whether you should use the public transportation or whether you should use a private transportation. What is the spend, which is in terms of the local spending is important, or you want to go go for import spending. So a lot of these sentiments we managed to cover from the external point of view. So it gives some good point of view in the marketplace.
Thank you all. Okay, let's move on to our next question. I think I might put these two questions together. One's from Nitin Yadav. Given the signs of recovery have started coming in, perhaps, are B2B companies looking to increase brand spend to pre-COVID levels? And a question also from Aniruddha Basu. We've seen cases of marketing and communication budgets being slashed as part of overall cost rationalization. How does that impact your outreach activities and innovation roadmap? So the question really is about budgets. Are they going to recover? Are they being slashed? If they are being slashed, how is that impacting the comms work that you're doing? I'll take 2 respondents, please, to that question, but I would ask you to try and limit your responses to no more than 2 minutes each. Who wants it?
Can I try on that one?
Yep, go ahead.
So I think, and I hope, and also I see a lot of interest from CEOs in terms of investing in communication. Now, how it's going to move is, maybe the budgets for marketing, for example, events, marketing communication, the physical events, that piece of budget will come down for the next couple of months for sure. But in terms of investment in internal communication, employee engagement, that is going to grow substantially because the CEOs and leaders have realized the importance of internal communication. The second piece I see growing is the connect with the customers and co-creating content. And that is something which is really doing well because now the B2B companies have realized that, it's all the more important to engage strongly and closely with the government because a lot of our communication strategies or business strategies are linked to the national agenda. Like Roma just said that, and I think that's very critical. The investment of communications budget in this sphere will go up substantially. Also, it's extremely important for us as communicators to be able to define that before the business strategy moves into the next phase, because we have to be ready with our asks and our outcomes, which we can show to the businesses. I think that part of being ready with the next stage is very critical. And I'm sure that the budgets will go up, but in different aspects, not the same way that it was during pre-COVID.
Thank you. Another point of view on that, is anyone keen to put forward? Yep, Arpana, you're on mute. Thanks.
No, I think something similar to what Rachana was saying. I just feel, yes, it's just a question of redeploying your budgets, kind of looking at it where your new priorities lie. So of course, a lot of offline events have been called off, etc. So there are budgets which were committed towards that. How do you kind of repurpose that for what lies ahead? So I think that's one. The second point is about a lot more integrated communications and deployment of your budgets in terms of across such a large organization, different businesses. And I think for us as communicators, at least in my organization, we are the enablers. We integrate, and that's even something as simple as your digital campaigns. It's between my lubricants team and my my retail team, just getting them together and saying, okay, fine, let's put in our budgets together and then go, because our your communication and our customer base is pretty much similar during these times. Let's use our messages are the same. So let's integrate and make better use of our monies. And I think the third part on the budgets, again, in terms of it will grow, but yes, energy companies, most of us have seen these have been tough times. So being prudent on what lies ahead. So you just have to be careful about what your objectives are, and again, kind of being very clear on what your ROIs therefore are.
So Arun, if I may add, I wanted to add something to what Arpana also said and Rachana said, that of course redeployment of resources, redeployment of budgets, of course that's there. And one key thing is upskilling within the communications team is something that's going to become the order of the day, in the sense that a lot of things for which we were earlier depending on a lot of outside support, where there was a large part of a budget that was going out, right? But then there are some skills that we can learn, relearn, and upskill ourselves. Like there are many tools out there thanks to the digital tools available today. So a lot of video support, a lot of things that we were doing as marketing communications, or for digital strategy. I think that we can start doing in-house and ourselves. And I think that kind of upskilling is going to be the order of the day. And help us save on budgets. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Arun, on a positive note, that all the budgets that at Vedanta that we see in terms of communication remain the same. In fact, we will up the decibel, because we are now at a time when we are going to be part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign. So we are really going to push out over there. I think the budgets are going to be there. The agencies are going to work very closely with us. We always find them as very valuable partners. And I think that's what's going to really take us together, is collaboration and to be working towards a common purpose. And at Vedanta, we're going to be doing that.
Well, it's very encouraging to hear. And I think I speak on behalf of everyone in that we hope the budgets, those that have been cut, do return. A comment from Nitin Mantri, of course, from PRCAI, he said they are conducting a survey as we speak. Results out next week. We will know a bit more about how everyone is thinking in terms of budget. So stay tuned for that. We have around 7 minutes left. A question here from Amandeep Singh. What elements of communication did you deliberately leave out, avoid during the period of the pandemic? So which areas have you had to steer clear of? Gayathri, I'm conscious that you haven't answered a question yet. I don't know if that's one that you do want to answer.
Sure. Let me take a shot at that. I think definitely in the initial period of the crisis, one of the things I think as B2B companies we do is, for us, a lot of our stakeholders do still value print media. And I think, somewhere the efficacy of the editorial route of using print as a medium kind of came into question for a little while. And I think that was something we probably did a little less of in the initial, phase of this crisis. But also, I think in terms of what we spoke about, I think that's where the real change was. I think in terms of, like I said, about contextualizing what we were talking about and making it more relevant to what people would like to know. I mean, whether it is my government stakeholders, my business partners, my JVs here, it's really important that the right messages about what the business is doing in India really goes out, and keeping in mind, all the surround sound that was happening around this time. So maybe I would say that some of the really boisterous stories may have kind of got toned down a bit in the face of a lot of negative news about people losing lives and how much of pain people were really going through. Some of that changed. Some of it probably also changed internally, because when you have to be more empathetic towards what employees are going through in terms of the kind of things that we are all facing, and the uncertainty that everybody was feeling. So I think the tone of what we were speaking about changed both internally and externally.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder if it's made people a little bit more ruthless in terms of their the focus that they bring now. Not to suggest that that wasn't always the case
You're right.
before, but it does feel to me like there's an added discipline around relevance.
Yeah, I think it's
which
like
is no bad thing.
I would probably say that it's like, being adaptable and being agile were always important to business. Has it suddenly become really more important than ever before? Absolutely. I think that's the change. That's the change.
And when I said ruthless, by the way, I meant from a messaging perspective.
Yes,
not from a,
you
not
just
from
have
a,
to be.
not-
No, I know what you're saying. I'm just giving that as an example. And I mean that the same way, us being much more focused on our messaging, focused on contextualization, all of this has, just become that much more sharper focus.
Okay, so I have one more question.
Just a
very
quick
quick
point on that one. I think just to answer that question, I don't think we've cut any channels. If anything else, we've supercharged and boosted most of our communication channels. If you look at the wider mix, the thing which is down, of course, is the physical events part of it. And that is a big part of our portfolio. So we're redeploying funds as needed. But on the communication side, it's only boosted the things. I echo what Gayathri said. I think what's important and what has changed is what we are communicating and the tone of what we are communicating. The tone is vitally important, right? It's the larger situation is not is something you have to take into account. There are 550,000 people who have lost their lives. We're going through a deep economic recession, potentially 7 or 8% contraction in the global economy. Just comparing to 2008, it was 2% in 2008, right? In terms of job losses, in 2008, 22 million jobs were lost. Right now, the ILO is calculating more than 300 million jobs are being lost. So it's a totally different scale. It's a tough time for so many people. So in terms of the tone of our communications, you got to walk a balance, because even if your business is doing well in certain places and there are things to celebrate, you do want to get that message out to show that normalcy to your investors and to your employees and your ecosystem. But you shouldn't do it in a very celebratory way, because you have to absolutely be sensitive to the fact that a large part of the world is, and many people are going through a very difficult period right now.
Suniet, the last question is for you from Mu Chakravorty. Do you see the lines of internal and external communication blurring during this pandemic? Is that a positive development? Does it count as innovation in communication, and will it persist after we emerge from this? You have technically a minute, but we can give you at least 2.
All right. So, well, I think, that's a very valid question. And there has been I think it's blurred now in the sense like, and I would say internal communications has taken precedence over a lot of activities. I think leadership communications has really gone up. And I think that's what initially we also did in the beginning. So, again, if you cascade it externally, these kind of communications are being amplified on social media channels. So, but there is a very thin line now drawn between internal and external. And so that's an answer in short.
Yeah, no, and I suspect it will persist after. I think this will be one of the, from a communications perspective, it will be one of the many takeaways we've learned about on today's session. I think unfortunately we're out of time. We still have a couple of questions that went unanswered, but please bear in mind that you can always ask our panelists on social media any questions that you might have. I need to thank all of our panelists for not only being insightful, but also for being so concise. It's been a pleasure. I think this webinar was a great antidote to Zoom fatigue. So thank you all for that as well. A lot of learnings and a lot of lessons. And with that said, let me hand back to Anubhati.
Thank you, Arun, for this fantastic session, and are indeed filled with lots of learnings. I would like to thank our panelists, Abhinav, Arpana, Deebba, Gayathri, Rachana, Roma, and Suniet for their time and their insights today. Thank you to all our attendees for taking the time out this evening. The next edition of the Innovation First Online Salon is scheduled for Wednesday, the 12th of August. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at RepTodayMag for updates on our upcoming offerings. See you soon, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
everyone. Thanks. Stay safe.
Thanks. Thanks, Arun. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Arun. Thanks, everyone.